Close your eyes and think of a food memory. This could be any experience involving food. A meal that reminds you of home, trying a new food for the first time, serving at a soup kitchen, or even vibrant colors of produce lining farm stands at your favorite market. These memories can lead us to experience a spectrum of emotions, shaping our attitudes and our interactions with food. Open your eyes and think about how we all have different food memories, and in some way, they have led us to share a similar hope for food in our communities. Now, coming from an immigrant family, my food memories are greatly influenced by my food culture. In April of 1992, my mom, dad, and 2 older brothers made the courageous voyage to the United States. In May of 1992, I was born and my parents settled in Toms River, New Jersey. Like most of us, I can't remember a whole lot from the first 3 years of my life, but I can still tell you I get so excited at the thought of weekend crabbing trips. There I am being the poster child of all things happy. This was probably my first interaction with getting food directly from the source, and that thrill surrounding the first catch of the day influenced my interest in knowing where my food comes from and my wanting to share that enthusiasm with others. Eventually, New Jersey became far too cold for my family, and we decided we would try to become snowbirds, only we never returned back north. I grew to call Florida my home, and its climate only encouraged my family to more authentically replicate life in the Philippines. Pretty much all year round, we could harvest vegetables from our garden or visit a neighbor for produce that we didn't grow. Fishing is also always an option, as long as you're willing to tolerate a harsh 50-degree winter. The access to all this healthy food lends itself to many family gatherings. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Filipino party, but no matter if you're in the Philippines, down south, out west, or up north, I can guarantee that you can break it down into 2 major components: copious amounts of food and karaoke. Now, when I say copious amounts of food, I hope you don't think I'm being hyperbolic. I mean, there are 2 turkeys on that one table, and that's how you know we don't play. As you can imagine, preparing for these feasts required all hands to be on deck. At my youngest, I was sat at the table peeling vegetables and plucking the ends off what seemed to be hundreds and hundreds of green beans. When I was tall enough to see over the counter, I was promoted to stirring the pot, slicing, and dicing. Now, as a child performing the mundane task of plucking the ends off those 100 green beans, I selfishly wondered to myself, why do we need to make so much food? I mean, the grand finale of any party was this half-hour-long event of guests packing to-go meals that would last them for the next few days. My family, even after that, had enough leftovers to last us for the next couple of days. So if we just made enough food, I wouldn't have to pluck that many green beans. The older I got, the more I realized that this tradition of food, and my dad singing the locomotion on karaoke, was teaching me the greatest lesson in sharing. We cooked with the mindfulness of sending our guests home with food for their loved ones who couldn't make it. We threw these parties with a come one, come all attitude, and we had to be prepared. The older I got, I realized that the point of having extra food on the table, especially during holidays and celebrations, was my mom's way of making sure that her friends and family didn't suffer from the hunger that she saw so many people suffer from. Food is meant to be shared. In my service, I try to replicate that same come one, come all feeling with my kids, hoping that they will also learn that food is meant to be shared. When I was accepted to FoodCorps Connecticut, I was pretty stoked to realize that the communities I'd be working in were diverse, representing a large Latin American and Caribbean population. Coming from Florida, I had a little bit of an idea of what foods might be culturally appropriate to bring into lessons, but I had no idea how powerful it would be to mention mangoes, pineapples, and even tomatillos. At the mention of any of these ingredients, an instant look of delight crosses all those faces that are familiar. Happiness goes from 0 to 60 in an instant, and the already rapid-fire storytelling becomes storytelling on steroids. So now you're listening to them tell you how their aunt and their grandpa on both sides of the family prepare these dishes, and they expect you to do the same next week. While we're celebrating some students' cultures, other students become curious to try these ingredients. They just want to see what all the hype is about. In this way, students are sharing food, but they're also sharing, but more importantly, they're sharing foods from home. As service members, we can invite different ingredients into our classrooms to inspire students to embrace their culture and the cultures of their classmates. Now, when you're thinking of your food memory, you probably had some kind of warm, fuzzy feeling at the thought of a certain ingredient. We're in a position to create that same kind of feel-good moment for them so that they grow to have a positive, healthy relationship with food that they can carry out into their futures. In doing so, kids can take pride in their culture and learn to share their own food, just as my mom taught me